Opinions expressed on Straight Talk with Austin and Ellio do not necessarily reflect or represent the views of Stingray Media, its staff, or contributors. Callers to the program accept full responsibility for the views expressed. The show host and affiliates are not liable for any statements made or any harm claimed. All callers to the program indemnify Straight Talk from all claims. Offensive, defamatory, or unlawful content will not be tolerated. Be a part of the conversation by calling 745-2626. Now, here's Straight Talk with Austin and Ellio on Bobo 103.1.
And hello, K-Man, and happy Friday, and welcome to another episode of Straight Talk here on Bobo 103.1 FM. I'm your host, Austin Harris.
And I am Ellio Solomon. How are you today, Mr. Harris?
I wasn't quite sure what was going on there.
Like, where are we going with this?
You know, pregnant pause. Was he taking a breath?
I wanted to say.
Do I say something?
I wanted to say something like, and I'm Ellio Solomon. Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday.
And Friday, indeed. Happy Friday to you. Trust you had
let me tell you,
a good one.
Let me tell you, I normally don't count the days, but I am sure glad
it's Friday.
that today is Friday.
It's a TGIF day for Ellio Solomon.
And not that I'm much for the royal family, but I'm sure glad the king has a birthday celebration too.
Well, I'm sure the king is celebrating his birthday for this day. In this case, the second time.
Yeah.
You know, it's good to be the king.
It's one of them little fake ones, but we'll take it. We'll take it.
Absolutely.
Do not think that the queen or the king is born in June, okay?
That's right.
It's probably sometime in December. Who knows?
Well, actually, I had heard today that his official birthday is in November.
Official or his real birthday?
Well, his real birthday, when
it's in November.
When his mother and mommy and daddy welcomed him into the world, it was in November.
See, he's probably a Scorpio.
Probably. I'm sure we can probably Google it and know for certain.
Well, let's track that down. That's the first investigation.
Well, that's the first investigation.
I mean, we can't have this thing running around. People thinking, the king is born in June, same time as his mom.
Charles' birthday.
Real birthday.
November 14th, 1948 was when. Why does King Charles have two birthdays? Let's see. Another so-called official birthday in the summer. Now, see, that makes sense. It's far too cold in England in the winter. I need a sunny disposition on the day that I bless the world with my presence. So we're going to do one in the summertime.
Considering to say that
it is more for the Commonwealth, and the summer months are more suitable for the parade. Because what birthday would be complete without a parade?
Without a parade. No.
See, when you're a king, you get
when it's a little retro, but hey.
Okay. When was Queen
Elizabeth? Yeah, probably need to be more specific when we say Queen Elizabeth, but yeah, okay. We'll take that.
Queen Elizabeth II, her birthday was the 21st of April. There you go.
So now you got it, ladies and gentlemen. Don't be running around thinking their birthday's in June.
No. One in April, the other in June.
And 14th of November.
That's right. That's right. Quite correct. So there we go. It will be a birthday celebration for His Majesty. Of course, there will be the weather. This calls for a tropical wave to move east of Jamaica and drift across the Western Caribbean tomorrow. It's expected to be, and that, of course, will increase chances of precipitation from Sunday into Monday. But we like it when it's moist.
When it's wet?
When it's wet, exactly, because, again, it's not so hot. And for the same reason as the dust, when it's cool, wet, or hazy, less chance for cyclone development.
You definitely don't want it too dry, Austin.
But moist is a good thing. So tonight's sort of what you were thinking of. Jeez, get your mind out of the gutter.
Hey, gutters are quite appropriate for the weather.
Partly cloudy skies are expected in your forecast tonight. Again, with lingering dust haze and a 30% chance of showers. Temperatures are expected to... winds will be moderate out of the east at 5 to 10 knots. Wave heights will be 3 to 5 feet. And again, we may have lingering moisture over the weekend. Maybe a chance for a shower or two tonight, all the way until Sunday morning. And presumably after that, it will be the return of sunshine, glorious sunshine. Yes.
So why are we moving away from our, single, strong, emotive Anglo-Saxon words like rain,
And replacing it with precipitation?
To pick up this Norman polysyllable, precipitation. And then we stepped away from seaweed, again, a good Anglo-Saxon term.
Sargasm.
It sounds like something great that went wrong. I mean, come on.
SARS and orgasm into the same word, sargasm.
Yeah. Like I said,
Yeah,
something good that kind of went wrong.
both questions. You have your rain or your seaweed, which is the popular term for it, but then you have precipitation and sargasm, which is more of the scientific definition.
It makes somebody feel better than what
of
you're
the
saying.
same words. Perhaps so. It makes it sound a bit more official.
Like we're more learned.
We're much more learned. To my learned friend's point,
Yes.
I never knew my father.
I never knew my father.
Every time I
If you could only say that
you-
with a touch of tears.
with a touch of tears.
I
Indeed.
never knew my father.
I never knew my father.
Yeah. So either way, So in other words, is there a distinction with a difference? I mean, is it just for rain or does it encapsulate anything else? Let's look this up.
You do that.
I will do that one because that's getting on my nerves. This precipitation.
Precipitation. I think precipitation is just another way of saying it's going to rain.
You see, I'm thinking that
Or,
maybe the encapsulate is something a little bit broader.
Okay.
Let me see.
Well, you're the one with the question. We want to make sure that you stay enlightened. Whilst you're looking that up, and of course, we talked about earlier on that Monday is the unofficial birthday of His Majesty King Charles. But there's also something really special happening on the holiday Monday here in Cayman. Caymanians Loxley Banks and Francis McConvey, along with the family of the late Morgan DaCosta, will be presented with medals by Her Excellency the Governor Jane Owen at the official celebration of the King's birthday on Monday, the 23rd of June. The presentation of honors will follow a house on West Bay Road on Monday at 8 a.m.
Trump had a parade for his birthday, eh?
Both Banks and McConvey were awarded the 2025 New Year's honors by His Majesty for outstanding services to the Cayman Islands. McConvey, the subject leader of music at John Gray High School and a teacher of more than 4 decades, received the British Empire Medal for services to music education in the Cayman Islands, whilst Mr. Loxley Banks, the former director of broadcasting at Radio Cayman, whose broadcasting career spans more than 60 years, Ellio. We got some catching up to do, and he was made a member of the Most Excellent Order of the British Empire for services to broadcasting in the Cayman Islands. Likewise, the late Morgan DaCosta, who passed away on the 29th of September last year, was awarded the King's Certificate and Badge of Honor in 2024 for service to cultural preservation and development. At the time, DaCosta was described as a passionate advocate for local arts and culture and was also a long-serving member of the Cayman National Cultural Foundation. These 3 stalwart Caymanians will be awarded their King's honors at an official celebration again on Monday, presumably in front of or at Her Excellency the Governor's home. So if you're in the area, either for the parade or the ceremony,
I think I was invited to that.
all are invited to attend. Oh, I missed the invitation, but
You did?
I did. But guess they know that I don't attend outdoor events until mid-November to March. They know my outdoor schedule.
Why didn't you get an invite?
I guess I'm just not special enough. I don't
You
know.
were a member of Parliament. Come on.
I was,
Oh,
but
you
I
thought-
am. I was. Let's see.
You should
No,
have gotten one of those.
I should have gotten
So
one.
anyway, I've looked up this precipitation, Mr. Harris. I've
Tell me.
dug and got right down to the bottom of the map.
Go for it.
It appears that I was right.
Mhm.
I hate to admit it. Precipitation is any form of water. Hey, be serious. Precipitation is any form of water that falls from the atmosphere to the Earth's surface. It includes rain, liquid water droplets, snow, ice crystals that form flakes. Amazing topic. We need to discuss snow one day. Sleet, frozen raindrops or ice pellets. Hail, balls or lumps of ice.
I thought hail and balls or lumps or ice were pretty much the same thing.
Well, it's hail,
Yeah.
which is now equals balls or lumps of ice.
Okay. Sorry. thought you
Focus, Harris.
I thought you were indicating two different things.
No, focus.
Focus. Okay.
This is the same thing happened when I told you about the movie Ellio.
You're right.
Drizzle.
You're right.
Listen, drizzle. Very light rain with small droplets.
Precipitation.
Freezing rain. Rain that freezes on contact with cold surfaces. Okay, so now we know
Glorious. Great
precipitation is a bit of a broader,
Much broader.
but it includes rain.
So
now
that way, when you say precipitation, you're really covering all possible bases.
covering all the bases.
Fantastic. I think we'll say precipitation going forward.
So therefore,
What kind of precipitation? Well, look up the word. It covers
so
everything.
from now on, if we say precipitation here in Cayman and you don't get rain, but you get hail, don't say you weren't informed.
And I wonder, since it is sort of a form of liquid, is perspiring a form of precipitation, but for the human forehead, perhaps?
I suppose you could use that as well as we've turned and used and created our own neologistic, neologistic attitude of saying that we have constipated our career, even though it wasn't meant to be used that way. It's apparently is being employed.
Well, there you go.
But either way, precipitation, there you go. That's good.
Okay.
Now we know.
Terrific. Now we know. For
Inquiring minds.
Inquiring wants to know, for, all the questions you were too afraid to ask. Well, here we are.
Asking on your behalf.
Clearly, Ellio, not afraid to ask those tough
I
questions.
just didn't know what it was.
You just didn't know what it was.
Because I'm just making it synonymous with rain, but I'm saying to myself, no, it's got to be broader. I mean, why are we saying the same thing a different way?
Quite right. Well, there you go. Thank you for answering that question.
We've educated, enlightened, and elevated ourselves.
We have.
And anyone who might
For
be
everybody who had a
and
burning
anyone
question.
else who might be eavesdropping
Right.
on our discussion.
Indeed. Exactly. Because it is just the two of us chatting away, really. The window might be open. You might be hearing us that way.
Either way, congratulations on the King Heroes Award there.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Again,
King's honors.
A lot of respect goes out to Loxley Banks, Francis McConvey, and, of course, the family of the late Morgan DaCosta. Obviously, Morgan left us far, far, far too early.
Yeah, that was a big shock.
That was a big shock to, I guess, the wide community, certainly to both of us. And we just want to send out a great big shout out, much love to his family, because we miss him. I mean, we certainly do. Again, it's Friday here on Straight Talk, and we are in the good news portion of our program where we like to start off each and every show with the good news before we get on to perhaps more of the technical, and not necessarily bad news, but probably more serious news that doesn't involve laughter. As always, we're broadcasting live over your radio dial, 103.1 FM, but also simulcasting live on YouTube and Facebook at the key search word Straight Talk Radio Show. You can also find us on the ACT Cruise Tourism Facebook page as well. Just whatever you find more comfortable and easier, whether you want to listen to us or both watch and listen. I think sometimes our jokes are better seen and heard, so you can really get the full effect of that humor. Some would say twisted humor, but humor nonetheless.
Just look for it.
It comes from a good place.
Sometimes it sneaks up on you.
That's right. In the good news category, specific to members of the Eastern Districts, particularly East End, I'm happy to announce that work has started on a new dock at the Heritage Beach in the district of East End. The original dock, as you may remember, Ellio, at Heritage Park, suffered severe damage back in 2021 during Tropical Storm Grace and was later rendered completely unusable following Hurricane Beryl in 2024. In a press release put out by the Ministry, I believe Ministry of Infrastructure, headed by the Honorable J. Ebanks, the press release added that for generations, Caymanians have relied on these docks for personal and commercial use, particularly in relation to fishing, transportation, and sharing our island's seafaring traditions. The construction efforts are a commitment to preserving that legacy for future generations and forms part of the ministry's broader strategy to enhance public access to coastal facilities. Fellow Cabinet Minister Isaac Rankin, the representative for the District of East End, said some of the funding for the new dock came through his ministry, so he too shared his vision and partnership between the Ministry of Youth, Sports, Culture, and Heritage and the Ministry of Planning, Lands, Agriculture, Housing, and Infrastructure will ensure that the success of the projects like these will continue. Certainly they won't run out of money, And both ministries embrace our past and are planning for the future. And this demonstrates our commitment to our communities, said Minister Rankin in his, I guess, press release on the same subject. So, EastEnders, you're getting your dock back, not just your dock, but a brand new one. And you have, obviously, your other civil servants who are actually out there with hammer and nail putting it together. So, more good news on your Friday. It doesn't state when these docks are expected to be completed, but I suspect it won't take too long. Hopefully they get it put in before the next major storm rolls in. And, well, depending on the quality of work.
Quality of construction.
It
might want to do it afterwards.
Or you might do it again. Who knows? But, hey, like I said before, you're sharing funding between two ministries, so you shouldn't run out of money. What else in the good news category? Oh, yes, there's two more items in the good news category. First, with following an inspection conducted early, improving from just satisfactory in previous inspections in 2020 and 2022. Now, before we continue, potentially all of the public schools in Cayman, because most of them didn't receive a very glowing report in past inspections, a number of an annoyance, I guess, and a disappointment for subsequent education ministers, which I suppose I can't say subsequent education ministers because for 2 terms at least, it was at least one minister. Now we have a new education minister who's not so new because he too held it at a previous time. But I think this is absolutely good news and a step in the right direction, suggesting that the ongoing efforts to improve the standards and to a number of years, school is performing at expected levels across several key areas. However, the school, it's referring to the John A. Cumber Primary School, serves 525 students aged 4 to 11 and achieved excellent ratings in leadership, self-evaluation, and improved planning. Also links with parent and community and staffing and in the learning environment. Students, according to the inspection report, student progress was rated good across English, mathematics, and science. Attainment was rated good in science and satisfactory in English and mathematics. Also, teaching and learning received good ratings in both early years and primary phases following the inspection, which took place between the 6th and 8th of May this year. Several areas were highlighted for their excellence, including their principal, Ms. Giovanna Wright, and her leadership team for their effective implementation of improvement plans since the last inspection. Obviously, as I stated before, this has been an ongoing effort, not only in this year, but in subsequent years as well. So this is certainly a good result following those efforts. In addition to this, the school's strong communication with parents, including the use of parental feedback to drive improvement, was also recognized by the inspectors at the Office of Education Standards. So well done and congratulations to John A. Cumber Primary School for, again, attaining the rating of good and in many other areas excellent. Encourage you to maintain this standing. Obviously, it plays well in the public domain, but most importantly, to the parents and students, as well as the teachers.
That was another one.
Relationship in education.
That was another one I was looking at, Mr. Harris, is this rating. So, of course, it says here that the schools in Cayman Islands get rated by the Office of Education Standards. Mm-hmm. It gets either an excellent, good, satisfactory, or weak. An excellent means that the school performs at the highest level in most or all areas, including student achievement, teaching quality, leadership, and safeguarding. And that good is the school meets the expected standards in most areas and shows effective teaching, student progress, and leadership. This is considered a solid, positive rating. Satisfactory is that the school meets the minimum standards but has areas that needs improvement. It is functioning but not at a strong level in several categories. And that weak, the school is performing below acceptable levels in key areas and needs significant improvement. This rating often triggers follow-up inspections and support. And the areas assessed typically include student achievement in English, math, science, teaching and learning quality, curriculum quality, health and safety, school leadership, and support for students with special needs. So interesting.
Very, very interesting.
I don't think we have any weak ones. I haven't seen that. I've seen a couple of good. But
Yeah. I think there have also been one or two pours along the way, not in recent times, but certainly in previous years.
I don't see that as a rating.
This has been something that has again, gotten a lot better over the years. And again, I think it highlights the Department of Education level. And I think this is all very good. So it's deserving of our recognition, and congratulations to those schools who have obviously made the concerted effort to improve.
Yeah, I think if you have it in that sort of a public way, because normally it's a sign somewhere out front of the school, right?
Yes.
In terms of the rating.
Well, certainly when they do this well, they definitely put a sign out important.
I think I definitely
highlight
seen
it.
Yeah, I've definitely seen where at least it said good. But
Yeah.
I would imagine that there would be transparency irrespective of whether it's excellent, satisfactory, weak, or good.
Yeah.
But either way, it's definitely something that would be a bit of a motivator for people to say, don't give us a bad mark on the
Right.
board outside.
So I don't see them, rushing to go, bum, bum, bum. Yeah, we got a weak rating this year, so we're going to post it. In the effort of transparency, they're just going to let that one slide. Or wait till next year.
So maybe maybe we can infer that no sign might mean satisfactory or weak.
That's right. No sign, but a other sign. Believe me, when they take that extra effort, they'll let you know by way of a sign, whether it's a regular sign or a neon sign, depends on obviously the
So if
level
we
of
pass a
attainment.
school that doesn't have a sign, we can knock on the door and say, hey, no sign, huh?
No sign,
You know
huh?
what's going on.
You got some work to do, do you? It's all right. Don't worry. I won't tell anybody.
Correct.
Correct. We got about 2 minutes, 56 minutes past the hour. 4 o'clock is the time in studios. And we got one more bit of good news. Well, I think it's good news. Some people may not. I know you'll think it's good news. But we've been talking about the Marriott Beach and their repair efforts to restore their beach in particular, to return it to the Marriott Beach Resort instead of the Marriott Yacht Club that we've been calling it. However, plans by the Grand Cayman Marriott Beach Resort to limit public access to 7 Mile Beach while it carries out these repair works have failed to gain the support of the Public Lands Commission. The Marriott proposes, under its Coastal Protection and Beach Enhancements Project, to deposit up to 8,000 cubic yards of fresh sand on a 60-foot stretch of shoreline in front of the hotel to restore the beach. Also, low-profile shoreline structures buried under the sand and below the main high water mark are proposed to help the sand from being swept away during future storms. And the Marriott had proposed at a Central Planning Authority meeting on or in its application that whilst it carries out these works, that it be allowed to restrict public access for beach walkers or anybody else wanting to walk back and forth. But the CPA, the Public Lands Commission said, no, you can conduct the works without restricting public access, which I think is a good thing. Now, I'm not quite sure of the process of, depositing 8,000 cubic feet to reclaim a beach that was lost and still have public access at the same time. But that's for them to figure out, not for me to understand. More importantly, though, whilst these works are underway, the public will still have all of the public access rights away as they always did. And that is, of course, also embedded in the law. And I'm glad to see the Public Lands Commission, in this case, really standing up and ensuring that the legislation is upheld and saying, I hear what you're saying, but you can get around it. And you can do so without inconveniencing the general public. So kudos to the Public Lands Commission, but also congratulations to Marriott for getting approval to commence those works. 59 minutes past the hour, 4 o'clock is the time. Keep it locked. We're going to pause, but there'll be more Straight Talk coming up next.
Bobo.
The BBC's From Our Own Correspondent.
In today's Russia, no one is allowed anywhere near the political stage if they pose a serious challenge to Vladimir Putin.
Stories and reflections from our reporters around the world.
There is a major sense of insecurity here. More people are coming in from Sudan every day.
From Our Own Correspondent from the BBC.
The home of the BBC World Service. This is Bobo FM.
How can we understand the world better.
The BBC World Service is a window onto the wider world.
A vantage point from which to survey a new horizon.
News, reports, and analysis from around the world.
Stories we think matter.
Different people from different societies.
We get to the heart of global issues.
News, stories, and global perspectives from the BBC World Service.
The home of the BBC World Service. This is Bobo FM. The BBC is the world's most trusted news source. And Bobo 103.1 is where you'll find the BBC World Service.
BBC News.
The world news from the BBC.
And the home of Cayman's most listened to talk shows.
That's right, folks. Everyone is telling their mama about the cold hard truth.
And welcome to Straight Talk. I'm your host, Austin Harris.
And I'm Ellio Solomon.
Across Cayman, on FM, online, and on your smart speaker. This is Bobo 103.1. This is Bobo 103.1, powered by Health Services Authority. At Health Services Authority, they are committed to caring for you. They are Cayman's largest and longest-standing healthcare provider, offering the most comprehensive range of inpatient, outpatient, and public health services at 9 different locations across all 3 islands. Across Cayman on 103.1 FM, online, and on your smart speaker. The home of the BBC World Service. This is Bobo 103.1.
Hello, I'm Eileen McHugh with the BBC News. Israel's envoy to the United Nations, Danny Danon, has warned that his country would not stop its attacks on Iran until Iran's nuclear threat was dismantled. The Iranian envoy, Amir Saeed Iravani, called for Security Council action. More from the BBC Persian's Bahman Kalbasi.
The Iranian ambassador held up a picture of the children who've been killed in an Israeli attack. The number of civilians that have died have grown to hundreds now, not an exact number in hand, but certainly a high hundreds. And we're getting stories of who these people are, women, ordinary people going about their lives, athletes, not just the officials who Israel killed in the first day.
At talks in Geneva, Iran's foreign minister told 3 European counterparts he was ready to consider diplomacy. Our chief international correspondent Lise Doucette sent this report.
More than 3 hours of talks yielded no breakthrough, but European ministers emerged convinced that Iran was ready to keep talking, but they all emphasised Iran had to resume its negotiations with the United States. Iran's foreign minister Abbas Araghchi said he was ready to meet with the Europeans again, but would only consider diplomacy with the US again once Israeli attacks stopped, and in his words, the aggressor was held accountable.
The Geneva talks took place as the exchange of fire between Israel and Iran continued, with Israel hit by a new round of Iranian strikes during Friday. The Israeli military reported an attack of 20 missiles targeting Haifa. One Israeli woman died of a heart attack, bringing the Israeli total since the conflict began at 25. Donald Trump has said his Director of National Intelligence, Tulsi Gabbard, was wrong in suggesting there is no evidence Iran is building a nuclear weapon. Speaking to reporters, the US President said Iran had already gathered a tremendous amount of material and could have a nuclear weapon within months. A federal judge in the United States has ordered that the pro-Palestinian student activist Mahmoud Khalil be released on bail after more than 3 months in detention. Mr. Khalil was arrested by immigration agents in March. Our North America correspondent Nomia Iqbal has more details.
Mahmoud Khalil, a former Columbia University graduate, was a prominent voice during the anti-war protests on campuses. The Syrian-born Palestinian has an American wife and is a legal resident. He wasn't charged with any crime. Instead, the Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, used a rare immigration law claiming his views were a threat to foreign policy. But a judge said Mr. Khalil was not a flight risk nor a danger to the community. Mahmoud Khalil will now fly back to New York to be reunited with his wife and son, who was born while he was in detention.
World News from the BBC. Lawmakers in Britain have taken a historic step towards allowing some terminally ill people to seek medical help to end their own lives. After hours of passionate debate, they approved a bill on assisted dying by a margin of 23 votes. Opponents said they feared the legislation could be abused. The family of Zambia's late president has announced plans to bury him in South Africa, where Edgar Lungu died earlier this month. His family and the Zambian government have since been at loggerheads over plans for the state funeral. Mr. Lungu's political opponent and current president, Hakainde Hichilema, was to welcome the remains and preside over a state funeral. Mr. Lungu's family say his final wishes were that Mr. Hichilema should not come anywhere near his body. There are reports that at least 16 people have died when a pit collapsed at the largest coltan mine in the Democratic Republic of Congo. The mineral is a vital component in electronics. The mine is in an area controlled by rebels linked to Rwanda. Will Ross reports.
The pit collapsed at a mine in Rubaya in eastern Congo. The area is one of the world's largest sources of coltan and was seized by the Rwanda-backed M23 rebels in April last year. UN experts estimated that the M23 was making around $800,000 a month by taxing the coltan trade. Next week, the Congolese and Rwandan governments are due to sign a peace agreement that should lead to the M23 withdrawing from areas they've occupied.
Panama has declared an emergency in its main banana-producing region after shops were looted and buildings were vandalised in ongoing protests over pension reforms. The government says constitutional rights will be suspended for the next 5 days in Bocas del Toro province. Troubles in the region began a month ago when the local banana workers' union joined a nationwide protest against proposed pension cuts and declared a strike. BBC News.
The views and opinions expressed on Straight Talk with Austin and Ellio do not necessarily reflect or represent the views of Stingray Media, its staff, or contributors. Callers to the program accept full responsibility for the views expressed. The show host and affiliates are not liable for any statements made or any harm claimed. All callers to the program indemnify Straight Talk from all claims. Offensive, defamatory, or unlawful content will not be tolerated. Be a part of the conversation by calling 745-2626. Now, here's Straight Talk with Austin and Ellio on Bobo 103.1.
And welcome back, K-Man, to more Straight Talk for this Friday, the 20th of June, with your host, Ellio Solomon, myself, Austin Harris. We're back live on air, broadcasting, of course, on your favorite radio dial, 103.1 FM, and simulcasting live over YouTube and Facebook with the key search word, Straight Talk Radio Show. You can also find us on the ACT Cruise Tourism page as well. The phone lines will be open now and all the way until 6:30. The number to call, 745-2626, or you can reach out to us on our WhatsApp number, 928-2562. And from there, you can share either a WhatsApp audio note or a traditional WhatsApp text message. And to round it off, you can also reach out to us via email by emailing host@straighttalk.ky. And Ellio, I do believe that's where we will start today from the email lines. We have received some communication from members of our listening audience. Will you please do the honors?
Oh, Austin, you know how I feel about this reading thing. You know what happens? What happens when I get into this reading is like my mind starts thinking about it, right?
Right.
And I don't know. You have the skill. Anyway, it seems that the official policy, and by the way, I definitely think there is a little bit of a wording issue on this because I did read through it, but I think we'll get the sense of it anyway.
Absolutely.
It seems that the official policy is to carry all emergencies, regardless of where they occur, to the HSA hospital. Tautological, but fine. They own the ambulance service. However, since the primary intention and mandate for the emergency ambulance service is to save lives, it flies in the face of logic and common sense to carry a critically ill motor vehicle accident that occurs in the eastern districts to the HSA when they have city facilities closer and may even be better equipped and staffed to deal with the matter of providing critical life-saving care in less time and with a staff complement that actually may be living on the compound. Health City is the preferred destination of the Caribbean for critical care relating to all cardiac and stroke-related surgery, both of which in emergency situations are extremely time-sensitive in order to preserve life. And in the case of a stroke, brain function. What happens in practice here on the island is that a stroke patient is transported from everywhere on the island, first to HSA, where the CT scan is done. If the machine is working or if it is not working or is in use, the patient is then transferred to the doctor's hospital to do the scan. When the study is done, the diagnosis is officially made. The patient is then taken by ambulance back up the road to Health City because it is the only place on the island where that sort of brain preservation surgery can be done, and it needs to be done within a time frame of about 2 to 3 hours after the stroke happens in order to preserve brain function. A similar situation obtains when the emergency is of the heart or severe chest trauma. The staff at the HSA is not at fault. This policy/protocol is coming from above the clinical staff that are actually seeing the patient. The doctor in the emergency room is unable to override the protocol without a CT scan report confirming stroke. Even though a layman with average intelligence can strongly suspect that the diagnosis, which is the most time-sensitive condition with the exception of a cardiac arrest, this protocol is absurd and should be reviewed and discussed and modified in order to avoid loss of life, and very costly for sending it in. Definitely something worthy to be looked into and to be discussed. Shall we now, Mr. Harris? I think that, as far as I'm aware, when Health City would have been giving its initial license in the Cayman Islands, it was to deal specifically with tertiary services. So in other words, tertiary services were services that initially you had to fly off of the island in order to be able to attain it.
Yeah.
So you didn't go to Health City unless it was a tertiary service. And I believe that this is where this protocol thing comes in here. I'm suspecting that you're supposed to go to your first destination, and it's only then when HSA determines that this is a tertiary issue that you now get transported to Health City. Of course, the author is making a very good point that in some of these cases, it might be even glaringly obvious what the situation is, and shouldn't you now bypass that unnecessary step of going to HSA simply for them to run some tests, and even worse, their machine might be down, and you have to be transported to doctor's hospital, only to be confirmed that, yes, this is a tertiary matter. Go ahead and ship them on to Health City. Again, it's something I would really like to look into, but from just a cursory overview, I mean, absolutely, it makes some sense. There's the fact that somebody could, when it comes to a lot of incidents, even some of those that seem to be not too of an emergency level, can result in problems because of time delays. And for sure, strokes, cardiacs, arrests, I would imagine is very, very time sensitive. And this is what I believe the caller without doubt is expressing. And the minutes that somebody has would make a difference between life or death, or even arguably worse sometimes, whether you become, a complete vegetable to people, or you actually had an opportunity to be saved in a much better state. So it is something that we need to think about and should discuss.
No, absolutely. And I want to thank the writer, of course, the listener first, for sharing this email with us. They certainly seem to be, I don't know if you, but the writing, but they seem to be in the know of this subject. This isn't entirely a layman writing this email, but perhaps someone maybe in the medical field.
Possibly, or at least someone who has experienced it in one way or another.
Absolutely. And I want to thank them because they make a very valid point that certainly, in terms of proximity of an accident or at a particular emergency, for example, I think the writer alluded to the fact that if there's an accident in the Eastern District, perhaps it might make more sense, particularly if it's a time critical matter, to simply transport the injured to the closest possible hospital, which in this instance would be Health City, as opposed to, making the trek all the way to town. And I certainly wouldn't disagree with that. But we also recognize that when we looked at the Health City project when it was first introduced, they weren't originally supposed to offer ambulatory care, but have since later on developed that. They've gotten their own.
They have that.
They've got their own ambulance, and from what I also understand, they're also, quite heavily utilized. Now, I can't say, as a layman, not in the medical profession or attached to it in any way, whether the writer's right or wrong in terms of, the policy that exists at present. And to your point, certainly something worth looking into. But I also recognize and recall that when Health City first came on the scene, there were certain tertiary medicine that they were going to specialize in, cardiovascular, orthopedic, for example. Both of those types of medicine traditionally were practiced overseas, for severe cardiovascular or knee replacement type surgeries and the like. You would normally have to go overseas, whether Baptist or, wherever the case may be. So from that standpoint, that was an improvement to the medical offerings here in the Cayman Islands. I think they also include, of course, cancer treatment. And I think the policy is worthy of a review, but I think we both also recognize that oftentimes a time when these services normally did have to go overseas and haven't been perhaps amended or updated since, of course, the introduction of Health City in the Cayman Islands.
Absolutely. And if I look at this and try to go back in time, you can hear the jingling in my head.
Sure.
Rust chinks falling off. But if we go back in time, initially the tertiary services, like I said, were services that you had to fly overseas for. And this became, to the best of my knowledge, this was a medical insurance issue, right? The insurance companies weren't going to cough up, if you like, unless HSA had to sign you off before you went off island. It was something to that effect.
Yes.
So that process was there initially in terms of tertiary services, and it seems it hasn't gone away, despite the fact that you no longer have to travel overseas to a completely different jurisdiction to get tertiary services. So just that in itself seems to be a little bit of a latency perhaps in changing a policy that needs to be tweaked, or some legacy somebody decided to bestow on us despite the fact that things have changed. And the other thing to note as well is that, there have been obviously some changes in terms of how how Health City is functioning.
Yes.
Again, from what I understood to be the initial remit, whatever those modifications are, one would have thought there would have been some tweaking or modifications to the initial policy as well. But what I do want to say is I'll undertake to have a little bit closer look into this. I guess another question is, I would like to infer that Health City has a CT scanner, but
I would imagine they do.
But the author doesn't say so, right?
Yeah.
This doesn't expressly state it, but clearly if the Health City also has a CT scanner, then one could obviously say, really, this is a completely unnecessary step.
But a CT scanner, correct me if I'm wrong, that will be considered nuclear science. So that's what they refer to when they say, it's nuclear in terms of the scanning ability outside of the traditional X-ray, but a CT scanner supposedly going much deeper into musculature and tendons type imaging.
Well, again,
I call nuclear imaging.
I'm not gonna try to claim to be an expert on that, but clearly the CT scan should be able to be giving you much more accurate readings, right?
Yes, no, absolutely, it does.
I'll keep it broad,
much more expensive.
Much more expensive.
The X-ray.
But I'm saying that because I would like to believe that Health City probably has a CT scanner. It is not mentioned in this email.
I think it would be safe to say yes.
It would be safe to say, but we don't know based on this email, and that would be the only reason I could say maybe if for some reason they don't have one, then you could see again a reason perhaps for that extra step. But particularly if they have the machine, it befuddles me why you would continue the old process. And I really believe the old process of going through HSA was primarily insurance driven, in that you had to go off the island and you needed to get approval from HSA before the insurance company, because bear in mind, no, they were going to be expending more money.
Yes.
And they didn't want to expend that additional money unless it was absolutely necessary. And HSA was the one who was supposed to make that call. But I definitely undertake to have a closer look into it and continue to give more feedback. But thank you very much for sending that in. Those are some good discussions that we can have to continue this process of educating, enlightening, and elevating.
No, absolutely. And if I could just add one more, I guess, piece to this conversation. A few weeks ago, Ellio, you will recall, I don't know, I'm just looking back at our notes, maybe we talked about it, that was held at the Parliament. I do see a caller calling in, though. Let me just stick a pin and take the caller first. Good evening, caller. You're on the air.
Good evening. I'm calling to rectify a little bit I want to talk about, because I know about it.
Okay.
Health City do have a CT scanner, and they have one at the new facilities. And then they have, because there's three things. It's a CT scanner, I understand. It's one they call the PET scan, and then the MRI. I've been through all of this, so I can tell you, not me, but experience with my husband.
Sure.
When he needed the PET scan, they didn't have it. We had to go to the Baptist Health down by the hospital on Smith Road.
Yeah, Smith Road.
Now they
Smith
also
Pharmacy.
has the PET scan at the new facility at Kamana Bay too. As I was saying, well now, which I mean, it's good to have two things on two facilities on the island because they do break down. But I was saying that since they get it now, they're going to cut Baptist Health out of some money because my husband just had to have one. He had one time, two times, and we had to go down. But the last one now that he had to go to the Health City, Kamana Bay. We didn't go to the Baptist Health. So,
Carl, I just want to confirm something, make sure I understood you correctly. So there's Health City in East End, and then there's also a Health City, if you like, at Kamana Bay.
Kamana Bay, the new facility, by the radiation center.
And you're saying that the Health City in East End does not have a CT scanner?
No, they have a CT scanner.
What they do?
And then they have it's the PET scanner. That one, if it's a difference between the two of them, it's the PET scan thing that they didn't have.
Okay.
But they have it now at the new facility, Kamana Bay. I don't know if they have that East End, but they do have the CT scanner East End and down here.
Okay. All right. Okay, well, that definitely clarifies something, and that's not in the email, so we greatly appreciate you sharing your experience with us.
And then the MRI thing, well, hospital have that, and Health City have that. And then they have it down at the new facility, too. And the one at the new facility, but that's the old one that be getting all them different pumps and whatever. Because I tell them I do like them 1 minute, it sounds like a tea kettle boiling. Next minute, it sounds like a mechanic pounding engine thing. Then the next minute, it sounds like a woodpecker pecking something. That's the ugly one. But they have a big one down here, too, which is big, kind of hospital one, kind of like enclosed that, I don't know, it feels like claustrophobic up and that, but they showed me the big old one down there the other day, that big. And it's by Philips, I think Philips is the company that they buy or something, but they have all of those facilities now.
All right, sweetheart. Thank you very much for the call and information. Greatly appreciate it.
Yes, indeed. Certainly do appreciate it.
So, so taking on board what that caller has said, and I take her at the veracity of her statements, that the Health City then does have a CT scanner, particularly, again, the one in East End. This email, again, was focused specifically on someone being in a mobile accident, for example, the specific example given in East End, being sent all the way back to town, get scanned, and then back again to Health City.
Not a very efficient process.
Definitely not efficient. And again, this just helps us to streamline it. Taking her based on the information she has provided, as I've said, I believe that the tertiary service in terms of the, this going to HSA first, perhaps started off with the medical insurance companies wanting to verify from HSA that the person really needed to go overseas. Because the last thing you want is everybody had a knee problem and they just say, I'm going overseas, because I want to go Baptist Hospital. And at the end of the day, that was a check and balance on that. Again, the tertiary services is here. Just that in itself tends to want to eliminate that. And the only thing that we had here as a bit of an if is, does Health City have a CT scanner? We're understanding from that caller that they do. So then I really don't see the need. I can imagine that Health Services as a company, as an authority that, attempts to make money might like the idea. You have to come here and pay for that first. We get a little bit of the juice. But outside of just processes and looking at saving lives, which is the top priority, I can't see where it makes sense. It should just go straight to Health City.
No, absolutely. Just with the 4 minutes or so we have remaining, hopefully it won't take me that long to say it. But one of the things I want to address is, in the first instance, we have to recognize that the quality of medical care locally has improved significantly since the introduction of Health City in our island here on Grand Cayman. Don't take my word for it. Certainly we have, a number of testimonials from patients who have utilized those services and, they swear by it. But also, since the introduction of Health City, this is why they say competition is a good thing. Since Health City came on the scene, medical services across hospitals in the Cayman Islands have also stepped up a notch or two, whether it be Doctors Hospital or
competition.
Competition is a good thing. That's what I'm saying. But where I am, and I think this is not a question for Health City, but largely a question for the government to answer. You may recall, Ellio, and I believe you were in office at the time, so you can correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah.
But one of the highlights, if you will, or selling points that at the time the minister, the Honourable Mark Scotland, who led the introduction of Health City into our jurisdiction, and certainly, was there during the grand opening and whatnot. One of the selling points he highlighted was that with the introduction of Health City in the Cayman Islands, a lot of the services that we previously sent overseas could be done locally. So on the one hand, it was obviously, creating a easier environment for family as well as victims or patients, rather, not victims, excuse the right word, thinking of emergencies and road crashes and whatnot. But, not only is it advantageous, so family can visit patients who are receiving tertiary level care, but also would reduce our dependence and subsequent costs of our overseas medical care, which at the time was running in the region of $30-40 million. But when we look at the actual budget, for example, in 2024, the government budgeted $30.6 million for overseas medical care, but actual spending for that year surpassed $72 million. Likewise, as we have been discussing, 2025, the budget for tertiary medical care stood at $14.5 million, but that number jumped significantly to $60 million. So the question, and again, this is largely a question for the government, not so Health City, or any of the hospitals for that matter, what happened to the selling point that by bringing Health City and by the improving of medical care in the Cayman Islands, so we technically didn't have to fly so many people overseas, why isn't it that the country has experienced these savings? And again, at the time, going back, I think, 2009-ish.
Yeah, between 2009 and 2012.
Yeah, I remember it distinctly because, again, we were on the air. We talked about it we weren't, but I was. You were
came
busy.
On every Friday.
You were busy in government. You came on every Friday. Government Friday was the thing. But again, we were spending in the region of $30 million a year. Fast forward, as I said, to last year and this year, we're spending twice that amount in actual spending. So clearly something isn't working. Now, are we spending those monies, but instead keeping those money locally, i.e. paying it to Health City, Doctors Hospital, as an example? Or are we still expending those services, and in particular, those taxpayer dollars, to overseas, therefore to build other economies? But now that spending has in fact doubled, raising the question that, again, when we originally convinced the public that this was a good thing, it was supposed to reduce costs and improve services. It certainly has improved services, but costs have doubled, not gone down. And I think this is perhaps, if we're ever fortunate enough to have the Minister of Health as our guest in studios, maybe it's something we can talk about as we, again, prepare for annual budget season, which, again, is expected, not too long from now.
I think you're raising some very good points. How much time do we have?
20 seconds. You want to make a comment when we come back?
We'll come back, yeah.
Excellent. Well, it is 29 minutes past the hour of 5 o'clock in studios. We have to take a break, short commercial break, but we will continue on this subject, started by a member of the listening audience, when Straight Talk returns here on Bobo FM.
More Straight Talk with Austin and Ellio coming up. Be a part of the conversation by calling 745-2626. Bobo 103.1.
When it comes to weekly meal prep, I trust Kirk Market to provide the best value for quality proteins. The butchers at Kirk Market are super helpful. They always slice my steaks perfectly. Kirk Market has everything I need for healthy and flavorful protein-packed meals. From lean cuts of CAB choice beef, tender CAB prime beef, the juiciest pork, and all-natural hormone-free poultry, to their seafood section with everything from fresh local snapper to omega-3 rich salmon. I choose Kirk Market for the highest quality proteins to support my healthy lifestyle. Kirk Market. Eat well, live well, and discover a world of choice.
The Office Hero. To claim this title, you have to make an exceedingly wise decision. Do something that benefits staff, impresses clients, all while keeping expenses low. Are you ready to be the Office Hero? Here's what to do. Call Hughes Cleaning Service. Hughes Cleaning Service will make your office shine and you a hero. Dusting, vacuuming, windows, sanitizing, and more. Hughes expert cleaners will make your office a healthy, immaculate, impressive workspace. Call 949-0734. Visit hughes-janitorial.com. Hughes, you get more than clean.
When you're on the go, the experienced team at Foster's Pharmacy are here to help. Drop off your prescription while you shop or WhatsApp us and we'll prepare it, ready for your arrival.
Whether you need prescription or over-the-counter medications, blood glucose testing, or advice on vitamins and supplements, we're here early in the morning to late at night. Both of our locations at our Camana Bay and airport stores are open 7 a.m. to 9 p.m., Monday to Saturday.
For more info, visit fosters.ky/pharmacy. Foster's Pharmacy. Better health because we care.
Visit Healthcare Pharmacy's second location in Governor Square, servicing West Bay and the 7 Mile Beach Corridor with the care and professionalism you have come to expect from Healthcare Pharmacy. Healthcare Pharmacy in Governor Square also stocks a huge selection of Hallmark and shoebox greeting cards, vitamins, sunblock, last minute, and everyday needs. To refill and transfer your prescriptions, simply WhatsApp 329-7313 or visit healthcarepharmacy.ky or drop by Monday to Saturday from 9 till 6.
Insurance matters. It gives you the confidence to live life as you should, knowing you're protected. As a leading local insurer for over 25 years, Island Heritage has a consistent track record of providing best-in-class customer service with quick and efficient claims processing. This means insurance you can rely on when you need it most. The Island Heritage Way. Visit us online at islandheritageinsurance.com today to learn more about our home, contents, motor, marine, and commercial insurance products. Go on and live your life. With Island Heritage, you can.
At Priced Right, spending less on everyday products is easy.
Spend less on office supplies, tools, and automotive products.
Spend less on groceries, fresh produce, and meat.
Spend less on electronics, TVs, and speakers.
Spend less on home furnishings, beauty products, and apparel.
At Priced Right, we believe you can live better for less.
To start saving, visit us at the Airport Center in Georgetown or at Republic's Plaza in West Bay.
For more info, visit pricedright.ky. Live better for less at Priced Right.
Across Cayman on FM, online, and on your smart speaker. This is Bobo 103.1, powered by Health Services Authority, committed to caring for you. The views and opinions expressed on Straight Talk with Austin and Ellio do not necessarily reflect or represent the views of Stingray Media, its staff, or contributors. Callers to the program accept full responsibility for the views expressed. The show host and affiliates are not liable for any statements made or any harm claimed. All callers to the program indemnify Straight Talk from all claims. Offensive, defamatory, or unlawful content will not be tolerated. Be a part of the conversation by calling 745-2626. Now, here's Straight Talk with Austin and Ellio on Bobo 103.1.
And welcome back, Cayman, to more Straight Talk here on Bobo 103.1 FM with your host, Ellio Solomon, myself, Austin Harris. Time in studios now 34 minutes past the hour of 5 o'clock. And the phone lines remain open at 745-2626, or you can reach out to us on our WhatsApp number 928-2562. But to prove the point that we oftentimes say that your calls and your opinions matter to us, certainly if you joined us from the last break, you know we are on the topic of healthcare in the Cayman Islands. A writer asked the question initially, certainly isn't it more efficient to perhaps allow ambulatory services to be provided to Health City or the HSA based on the proximity, in some cases, of the accidents that may occur? But also they go on to add the fact that perhaps also when we consider the seriousness or the level of the emergency, again, some hospitals are better equipped than others. Why make the perhaps inefficient effort of going all the way to the HSA or the Anthony S. Eden Hospital, as it is now called today, versus obviously just going to the right place the first time, because we all accept that when it comes down to saving lives, time matters. But again, to make the point that a listener or a viewer, either one, took us down this path, and we want to thank them for sharing the question and the statement. And
that I think the initial process used to simply be, back in the day when the medical services wasn't that great and everyone had to fly overseas for tertiary services, you had to go to HSA first for medical purposes before it was approved.
Right.
Because you didn't want you just jumping on the plane and saying, I'm going off to the U.S. and get this service, and then they have to pay more. But considering the caller, and to your point, again, of everybody giving feedback, that caller being able to confirm that we have a CT scanner at Health City clearly says to me, I don't see why you need that extra step in the process, and you only risk losing lives. And as I've said before, maybe it's a case now that we got a little system that's been passed down, but it's convenient now because it gives health services an opportunity to continue to make a little bit of extra money.
Yeah.
With that little extra step in the process. So maybe that might be the case.
Good observation.
And I want to say, in relation to some of the things you talk about with the tertiary services, I mean, that would have been made by Mark Scotland at the time when he was the Minister for Health. I mean, we definitely saw and envisaged a lot of benefits, right? I mean, that money being spent clearly in the Cayman economy, regardless of the economy, and hopefully, again, the speed and the quality of service was good as well. You raise an interesting point talking about going from 30 million to 72 or whatever.
Yeah, 72 and then 60.
Going based on those facts, I can't say that I know why, but just having a quick look at the population, between 2009, the population was 52,000, and now we're up about 75. Now, I don't know if that's the reason, or we're just getting sicker, or a combination of both, but that's something to factor in.
But that's a very good observation and a good point, but again, correct me if I'm wrong. Indigent care in the Cayman Islands are services that the Cayman Islands government provides to Caymanians only, if I'm correct. You have to be a Caymanian or of Caymanian descent in order to get free access.
Should be, I would think.
So therefore, the population increase, clearly because we haven't made more babies and therefore perhaps, we're aging faster, the population increase shouldn't have an impact on overseas indigent medical care because it doesn't apply to foreign nationals.
I would say that, again, as we have seen, even with remit of hospitals, I think clearly there's some changes that's taking place in Senegal, and I'm not going to claim to be an expert in it.
Me neither.
But it's a much broader thing now because everybody can go and just get insurance via Senegal, for example, and I don't remember that being the case back in the day. It was civil servants, and it was persons who were indigent.
Yeah,
and
so on a limited basis at the very least.
And I'm understanding they're probably selling other insurance other than that now too. So I really don't know. All I can say is you raise an excellent point as why is it going up? It's something we need to know, need to understand. The only thing I can throw the factor is, are we getting sicker? Have there been changes, for example, to now add that? Have there been changes to the sort of medical policies that exist? No.
Well, definitely questions that we're going to make a careful note of. And as we said before, should we ever have the opportunity to be fortunate enough to, and again, the clock is ticking. Again, under the public management and finance law, we have to deliver a budget, and our budget is now done in 2-year cycles. But according to the law, that budget has to be approved in Parliament before the 31st of December. So we could see theoretically setting ourselves up for a very, very busy parliamentary session. As we stated yesterday, the government seeking to bring in after October. Potentially, if the government chooses to present its strategic policy statement in line with the presentation of the budget, which usually they go hand in hand because you present the budget, the plans, and then you present how you're going to pay for those plans in the same sort of breath. We could be setting ourselves up for a very busy and active parliamentary session, normally, again, with the current 3 months on the budget and a busy end of year. In terms of what are some of the reasons, okay, let's just take government and hospitals in general out of the picture. We recognize that healthcare is on the rise, and this is a global phenomenon. It's not just Cayman that's unique to this. And we recognize that, the high cost of specialized care has increased. Obviously the cost associated with insurance has increased, and that has,
a good factor too.
And that has led to the increased in terms of healthcare and paying for those services. Again, as we always say, the dollar today didn't buy as much as the dollar is yesterday because of the cost of living.
Yeah.
But on the insurance standpoint, and this is something that we've also argued on for a number of years, and I'm just going to say it, for far too long, we've allowed annually upon annually upon annually because they're allowed to cherry pick only the best business in the Cayman Islands, i.e. Only persons with a job are getting insurance from any number of the insurance providers in the Cayman Islands.
You want healthy people, not sick.
Regardless of exactly. We say it tongue in cheek, but in reality, they are charging a premium to healthy persons and therefore making a profit on it, leaving the theoretical or actual bad debt, those persons who can't afford insurance,
ones who really need it,
persons who can't pay, and to your point, arguably the persons who really need it, because likewise, if you have an insurance plan, if you have a job, you're reducing your long-term adverse health effects and also presumably long-term adverse health costs. But if you are more so done out of necessity as opposed to
here's what I can afford.
Which is what I can afford.
I can afford to go in the bush.
Exactly. You know what I mean? So I'm going to go back to how my grandfather and mothers and my father taught me. But really, if I had a choice, I would rather go into the hospital, but I can't afford it. We continue in the Cayman Islands, and this is a question again for the government and ministers and maybe even the premier to get involved. How long are we going to allow the private sector insurance companies in Cayman to cherry pick only the good business and expecting the Cayman taxpayer? Because whether you talk about Synico or government, as we continue to remind, both of those draw from the same trough. They're drawing from taxpayer money. Why should the taxpayer carry the continued burden of all of the bad debt in the Cayman Islands? Meanwhile, and again, don't take my word for it, look at the annual reports of these insurance companies, which are sitting right there in the waiting room every time you have an appointment. They're happy to brag about how stronger they are this year than they were last year. But remember, these profits are being earned off of the backs of Caymanians and residents of the Cayman Islands. And I just ask, is that fair? And can we honestly continue down this path?
All I can say, Mr. Harris, is that you're kind of reminding me of Winnie the Pooh now. You are stirring the bee's nest. Oh, my God, I would tell you. No, you listen, to me, you've always questioned, right? And they're almost as bad sometimes as the doctors. I got a comment about doctors, too, for all those who are listening. But let me just say this, right? You have a situation where I'm going to walk in. I don't smoke. I don't drink. but I'm going to pay the same policy as the other guy.
That's right.
You know, it's like, why is that? Why am I not getting this 4:30 in the morning when people knock you off your bicycle? You probably get deductions, but you get my point.
30. Well, you know, you get
dark 30.
And they get points if you're wearing black instead of
particular. Another response, believe the directly report. What?
Absolutely.
Exactly.
Something, to your point, certainly ensure profitability for a lot of
abuse.
Positive amendment. There's clear room for a lot of abuse. Thank you for that correction. In the current policy and laws, arguably holding the wrong people to account. But likewise, there's also a lot of room for, some useful, relevant times, a bigger question of, well, how impactful is that improvement? Is it filtering down to the man on the street? Is it improving their lives as opposed to, in this case, as we continue to talk about, is it improving the lives of insurance companies, private insurance companies, allowing them to cherry pick, allowing them to obviously get the best business and grow their profits? Obviously, where this matters to Cayman, and again, we see it the first quarter of this year. When people say, well, what's the strength of the Cayman Islands financial services sector? Between January and March, that's a good thing. It says that despite the many challenges that have, been thrown at the Cayman Islands, financial services is in fact still resilient, if not stronger this year than it was last year. That means there's either more money under management or there are more companies doing financial services in the Cayman. Financial services, in particular, when you think of life insurance, annuities, all of those are financial service products, albeit under the insurance umbrella. So yes, on the one hand, the government has, and the only responsibility of government from days of old is to create the environment in which
business can thrive.
Business and people may thrive. But in the Cayman Islands, and again, not unique just to Cayman, sometimes most governments worldwide usually get one side or the other right, but never or rarely both at the same time. And I'm not gonna criticize my own country and or my own government to say that that's not us ever. We have achieved balance sometimes, but consistency is the key. And if you ask the man on the grind, the man under pressure, he will tell you, my life is harder today than it was yesterday. And that is where the political influence and, of course, the political legislation needs to be able to permeate all the way down to. Otherwise, some will say, well, yeah, we passed a lot of laws. We made a lot of amendments. They're where we need to get to. And certainly when we look at healthcare, when we look.
A very good point. Particularly, I want to pick up on where you say, that where businesses can thrive as well as the individuals. And I started to make a bit of a smart comment when I talked about saying something in relation to doctors. And let me just use, first of all, picking up on your point, let me use health or medical insurance and the doctors in this particular example. If you actually look, there are some businesses where you can actually sit and say of human beings, the longevity of human beings. Insurance could possibly be one of those, right? Mm-hmm. So you could see that when I sit before, or the actual a guy or a lady sits before the insurance company, you should be being rewarded to some extent. My God, even if it's $10. Oh, wow, you run every day. Check. Yeah. Or you don't smoke. Check. Whatever. No, I assume you can confirm these things because here's where the business jives with the human longevity, in the sense that I do want to charge you money. And the healthier you are, the more money where your longevity, your existence jives so well with the business model. Mm-hmm. But you don't, again, see insurance companies doing that. Now, if I flip it around on the doctor's side, again, this is where I have a challenge with some doctors. Not all doctors are created equal. So I'm not saying all of them fall in this category. But typically you'll walk in, I've got a pain in my stomach, I've got a pain in my head. And they're already writing your prescription.
Oh, yeah, I got just the thing for you there.
They're already, you haven't finished saying what you have to say, and they know exactly what pill they're going to give you. And I've always had a problem with a doctor. Well, let me ask you, how much water do you drink every day? Do you exercise? Do you smoke? Oh, well, you should have told me you drink 3 bottles of rum every night. That would have informed me why you're having a headache. And so I prefer to deal with sick people than healthy ones. Mm-hmm. One makes me more money than the other. But again, like I said, particularly when it comes to insurance, it is something that I think the government needs to apply a little bit of pressure. It should be something that we're looking at it holistically and saying, let's reward the people that are being healthy. That will also equal incentivize persons who are not being as healthy as he or she could to start being a little bit healthy, even to save a $10. Yeah. It's something that can work, but the government needs to drive it and champion it. That's why we vote them in.
Well, to your point, certainly on some doctors who take the approach of perhaps prescription care versus wellness or holistic care, we know and accept that many doctors, or forgive me, many pharmaceutical companies seek out doctors in busy hospitals to establish relationships with, and then say, listen, push my product.
I understand from the time they get their degree, they're getting solicited.
Push my product, and I'll give you, quote unquote, a commission if the business grows or whatnot. And doctors are obviously motivated by this because it's extra, a little extra money every single month. So that is not an evil in and of itself. We usually hear about the whole prescription care or approach to doctors largely in the U.S. because they adopted the phrase, what they know in the U.S. is uncommon here, but in the U.S. it's called HMOs. So these are organizations that work outside of your standard traditional hospital. I think an HMO is a health maintenance organization, I think the technical term is. And basically they are the middleman. They're providing you these services. Oftentimes they're private, but to your point, this is where that relationship between the pharmaceutical companies and the doctors are grown, and thereby this, trend that has developed over the years that says, to your point, before you even walk in, I got a prescription for you. And I think that is what has led to the rise of now, if you watch cable TV and there's a new drug every week for, illnesses that you ain't never heard of, like tired leg syndrome. Before it was just my leg went to sleep because I sat on it too long. Right. But now it's like, no, do not ignore this. It could be a sign of something more troubling. Tired leg syndrome, but good thing there's a pill for that. So whether these pills work or not, but clearly it's a business like all things. But you bought it. That you bought it, indeed. You made a point earlier, pal of mine, in terms of, again, responding to the original email that started this discussion. Again, how serious we take your opinions, your comments, your questions to Straight Talk. We will discuss it, and in this case, comprehensively, to the best of our abilities. You talked about perhaps one of the reasons why the present policy or practice is for, ambulatory care to go to HSA regardless of proximity, regardless of service, regardless of skill, because perhaps the HSA or the government or the insurance providers within the public sector want a little bit of piece of the action.
Right.
Well, I think you were bang on accurate, as I said, of the analogy and the suggestion you gave. It says, in reality, it's the reverse situation with insurance. HSA just wants to be able to bill the insurance for ambulatory services and imaging services at the expense of skilled, efficient care. So, again, if we take the writer at the veracity of their statement, and again, there was no question mark in this statement. This was, I'm telling you something. This is a statement of fact.
You can take my word.
Take it from me.
As sure as Christ died for the sinners.
As sure as Christ died for the sinners, you can believe what I'm telling you to be the truth.
Mark it in your Bible.
Exactly, is the way this is written, suggesting again that this is the case, and it may be one of those uncomfortable truths that nobody will admit in the daylight, but it perhaps may very well be part of the practice. And again, when you look at medicine, when you look at the cost of healthcare, there's a lot going on behind the proverbial curtain that we simply aren't being told up front, but there's no arguing or denying that it isn't happening.
But you see, again, that's the gravity of that, when it really sinks in on you, the gravity of that is tremendous. If what we are saying and hearing is true, that you are allowing an additional step in this process, which is not required, and the real reason you're doing it is simply to make an extra dollar for a monetary purpose. That is a major problem, because we are taking it again at the veracity of those statements coming in. You are saying that you are risking lives to make an extra dollar. Talk about for the love of money is the root of all evil. You can't play with people's lives like that. Get this this woman to the hospital quick o'clock.
Yes, sir.
We don't have time to try to make an extra $10, $15, whatever you're going to make, or $1,000, whatever you're going to make.
Yeah.
Just so you can make the dollar, risking the fact that this person had a stroke or having a heart attack is going to end up dead, or maybe even worse, wishing that they were dead.
That's right.
That is a major indictment right there in terms of that particular statement.
Sure. It's a moral implication, and certainly one that is worthy of addressing. And again, we want to thank the writer for sharing the email that started us down the thread. And obviously, we've diverged down, and we've taken a few detours in this topic. But again, I believe it has been, our holistic, if not comprehensive approach.
I think we did exactly what that author wanted.
Well, I think so. I hope so. And they can certainly tell us whether we did or didn't. But certainly, we try to provide as comprehensive an answer to our listeners, who are, as we say all the time, our most valuable commodity. Your opinions matter to us, and we will do our endeavor best to answer your questions to the best of our abilities. But I don't want to take the government I don't want them to miss, I think, one of the nuggets that came out of this question. And again, whether it's Health City, whether it's Doctors Hospital, or whether it be, I think there's another proposal if you go on the Esterly Tibbetts Highway heading west. There's some signs there as you get closer to West Bay suggesting there may be a third tertiary care player yet to come to the country, but obviously seeing the success that Health City has generated. We were told as a public that the introduction of these overseas medical facilities were intended to save the country money in terms of overseas medical care. Again, at the time, we were spending about $30 million a year. That clearly has not yet happened. In fact, to the contrary, the reverse has happened. Our cost from the taxpayer's purse has doubled, if not tripled, in the last 10, 15 years to, again, nearly $73 million in 2024, a further $60 million, just above $60 million in 2025, just using recent statistics, again, coming from the government's actual budgeting numbers, not pulling it out of thin air. These are there. Why is that? Why are we paying more for services that we were supposed to, or we were led to believe that we would, in fact, save money on? This is a question that we will present to the current Minister of Health, again, amongst other questions, should we ever have the opportunity to have them in studio. So the government, if you got your ears on, you might want to make a few notes on a Post-it pad or whatever, because...
Time check?
Time check, 37 seconds.
No, I was saying you're making a very good point, and I definitely want to discuss that as well, because I'm inferring that that tertiary service also includes what they're spending here, right?
Yes. Oh, absolutely, presumably.
And it just reminds me very quickly of the situation when the rape increased, and you said, well, did we get more rape, or did something happen that actually caused more reporting to happen?
Absolutely, good point. 59 minutes past the hour, 5 o'clock is the time. We're going to pause, take a short commercial break, check in with our news partner, the BBC. But keep it locked. There'll be more Straight Talk still to come on Bobo 103.1 FM.
Bobo.
Welcome to our newsroom here in central London. We place ourselves here at a little desk right in the thick of things.
OS from the BBC.
We can catch the very latest news from our colleagues, not just in this enormous room, but also from our colleagues around the world.
I'm in the room where they're treating children.
This is a combat zone.
The situation after the typhoon is very complicated.
It was a very tense situation. OS from the BBC.
The home of the BBC World Service. This is Bobo FM.
BBC News.
BBC News.
World news from the BBC. Violent clashes. Thick black smoke.
A tremendous legal victory.
Crucial elections.
Destructive winds.
A search and recovery operation.
A race against time.
An imminent threat. Flying a drone over a rival team's training session.
Whatever is happening, wherever it's happening, catch up with the latest news bulletins from the BBC.
The home of the BBC World Service. This is Bobo FM.
The BBC's From Our Own Correspondent.
In today's Russia, no one is allowed anywhere near the political stage if they pose a serious challenge to Vladimir Putin.
Stories and reflections from our reporters around the world.
There is a major sense of insecurity here. More people are coming in from Sudan every day.
From Our Own Correspondent from the BBC.
The home of the BBC World Service. This is Bobo FM. This is Bobo 103.1, powered by Health Services Authority.
At Health Services Authority, they are committed to caring for you. They are Cayman's largest and longest-standing healthcare provider, offering the most comprehensive range of inpatient, outpatient, and public health services at 9 different locations across all 3 islands.
Across Cayman on 103.1 FM, online, and on your smart speaker. The home of the BBC World Service. This is Bobo 103.1.
BBC News, hello, I'm Eileen McHugh. Israel's envoy to the United Nations has warned his country would not stop its attacks on Iran until Iran's nuclear threat was... At talks in Geneva, Iran's Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi told 3 European counterparts he was ready to meet with them again, but said Iran would consider diplomacy with the US only after Israeli attacks had stopped.
Iran is ready to consider diplomacy once again, and once aggression is stopped and the aggressor is held accountable for the crimes committed. In this regard, I made it crystal clear that Iran's defense capabilities are not negotiable.
The Geneva talks took place as the exchange of fire between Israel and Iran continued, with Israel hit by a new round of Iranian strikes during Friday. The Israeli military reported an attack of 20 missiles targeting Haifa. 1 Israeli woman died of a heart attack, bringing the Israeli total since the conflict began to 25. Casualty figures in Iran have been difficult to confirm. The US Director of National Intelligence, Tulsi Gabbard, now says the US has intelligence that Iran is at the point where it can produce a nuclear weapon within weeks if it wanted to. She accused the media of distorting testimony she made to a Senate committee in March. She said at the time that the intelligence community did not believe Iran was building a nuclear weapon. The latest statement comes after she was contradicted twice by President Trump, who said she was wrong about Iran's intentions. The BBC understands the British government is planning to ban the Palestine Action Group, in effect branding it as a terrorist organisation. Earlier, the pro-Palestinian protest organisation released a video showing its members damaging Air Force planes at a military base in central England. The base is a hub for flights to a British airbase in Cyprus, from where surveillance and support flights linked to Israel's campaign in Gaza have been launched. The family of Zambia's late president, Edgar Lungu, has announced plans to bury him in South Africa, where he died earlier this month. His family and the Zambian government have since been...
A state funeral. His political opponent and current president, Hakainde Hichilema, was to welcome the remains and preside over the ceremony. The problem, Mr. Lungu's family says, was his final wishes that Mr. Hichilema should not come anywhere near his body. He will now be buried in a private ceremony outside his home country. Wife and 3 children have been arrested.
Democratic Republic of Congo. The mineral is a vital component in electronics. The Rubaya mine is in an area of eastern Congo that was captured last year by Rwanda-backed region after shops were looted and buildings were vandalized in ongoing protests over pension reforms. The government says constitutional rights will be suspended for the next 5 days in Bocas del Toro's freedom of movement and allows the police to make arrests without a warrant.
Esta medida la tomamos para evitar
This measure is intended to prevent radical and criminal gangs from convening to plan violence, vandalism and actions that endanger property and lives or disturb peace.
Proposed pension cuts up to end their own lives. After hours of passionate debate, they approved a bill on assisted dying by a margin of 23 votes. Opponents said they feared the legislation could be abused to coerce vulnerable people. Supporters argued it would allow the seriously ill to die with more dignity. The Italian fashion designer Giorgio Armani will miss his 2 shows at Milan's Men's Fashion Week for the first time in over 50 years. The company has said the 91-year-old is recovering at home after being admitted to hospital. They added that he will closely follow every phase of the shows as usual. Mr. Armani is expected to attend fashion shows in Paris to present his haute couture collection. BBC News.
The views and opinions expressed on Straight Talk with Austin and Ellio do not necessarily reflect or represent the views of Stingray Media, its staff, or contributors. Callers to the program accept full responsibility for the views expressed. The show host and affiliates are not liable for any statements made or any harm claimed. All callers to the program indemnify Straight Talk from all claims. Offensive, defamatory, or unlawful content will not be tolerated. Be a part of the conversation by calling 745-2626. Now, here's Straight Talk with Austin and Ellio on Bobo 103.1.
And welcome back, man, to more Straight Talk here on Bobo 103.1 FM and simulcasting live on YouTube and Facebook with your host, Ellio Solomon, myself, Austin Harris. 7 minutes past the week. Again, reminding you that Straight Talk airs every weekday evening from 4:30 to 6:30, Monday through Friday here on Bobo 103.1 FM. The phone lines remain open, 745-2626. If you've got a comment to any of the discussions we've been hosting so far, largely on the, on the topic of healthcare, the rising cost of healthcare, but also the distribution of healthcare services, whether it be between Health City and HSA. Is it done so more so for the benefit of the various hospitals and therefore taking the priority away from the patient? Again, we've shared our piece, and again, we've done it as comprehensive as we know how. But if there's still any lingering question or comment, by all means, the phone lines are open to you to take advantage of that number again, 745-2626. And from there, you have 2 options. If you wish to write it rather than say it, you can certainly email it as well to host@straighttalk.ky. Ellio?
Topics. Yep. You will recall that we were in
we were discussing the issue of smuggling.
Discussing that, and then we had a call from Mr. Mario Ebanks, and he raised this issue, and I don't think that we have enough time to cover this. You go to the restaurant, you sit down, you have a meal, and back in the old days, it was simply a case, you ate your meal, you done a great meal with poor service. But either way, if you thought your service and food was good, you gave a tip. Mm-hmm. And then, of course, 15%, I think, normally is what was put on there as gratuitous. So one of the things that Mr. Ebanks raised was, is it fair in how he talked about traveling and stated tourists who will be even more so unaware. So let's just look at that. For example, or whatever that amount is for your food. Somebody's saying that in addition to that, you pay a mandatory 15%. And of course, paying for, like another business, you sell a product, and the product should cover the costs of the product and the services that's being offered. Why am I having to pay an additional 10 and 15%? Why is it not just a case that I go to a restaurant and if I feel like tipping, I'll tip 15% onto your food? But here's a challenge, and I think Mr. Ari was alluding to this as well. So now you got a fifth, do you want to tip or not? It's a social challenge, to say the least, if I'm already paying gratuities and then the waiter themselves is asking me if I want to put a tip or not. Because the completely logical answer is to say, of course not. I've just paid 15% gratuities. To just speak the honest truth and say, no, I don't. You end up perhaps feeling a little bit robbed, but you say, I'll add in an extra $10 or whatever it is that you add as the tip. And I think just from that social perspective, one could argue that, hey, there needs to be clear transparency for both locals and foreigners alike in terms of what you're paying with respect to gratuities. And I would just maybe you might want to just exclude that, because unless you're going to excessively go to your way to say, listen, you're paying gratuities, by no means are you obliged to give a tip.
Right.
Because a person will probably end up feeling a little bit ripped off. So either way, I went up and looked, and that there is a legal frame. You're supposed to have the fact that you have gratuities published in a public way that you can see. Have you ever seen that, Mr. Harris?
There's no sign in any restaurant anywhere.
If you look at the bill receipt carefully, then you're normally on the right-hand side that says, you're $95 or whatever, right? You didn't look at the fine print.
Yep.
And again, this is talking of up to $10,000.
Interesting.
So I just want to say I've never heard that.
Yeah.
And I've never seen this. And this might just be, again, another classic case of the law is there, but not enforced.
Right. Well, geez, that has never happened in the Cayman Islands.
Yes,
Come on.
yes. Yeah, exactly.
No one in government ever.
Happens all the time.
Happens every day, twice on Sundays.
Yeah, so there's a myriad of different rules that are there about managing the whole issue of gratuities and stuff like that. And I just thought I would again thank Mario for bringing up the discussion, and hopefully we can ventilate it some more on Tuesday and do a proper job of it. But it is something for us to restaurants, because there is, as we would now be saying, and you should be prepared. So I would say, I don't think that we're challenging that right now, as opposed to the tips. I used to like the days of tips, and quite frankly, in my days of tipping, I think I probably would have given the point that he raised. And apparently that's in the law that you should make it abundant.
For obviously, brooding lines were perhaps
topic,
but we get back on track where we were on the table.
Yeah.
However, I want to congratulate you for, as I said, brooding on the question over the course of a day or two and and identifying that businesses do have a legal obligation to display the fact that you are charging gratuities in a public space to your potential customers. And presumably that means somewhere else other than the bill, which comes at the end. We have a great many laws. This is a question for, I think, the Department of Commerce and Investment, I think if they're called. These are areas that they would certainly police potentially.
I think this one...
That, the hot potatoes are tossed to, so you just, give up and lose patience with it all. But it's in the law, so we say if you...
And it's police.
Right. On the question, though, of gratuities, whether to add in advance or, give the people the option to do so on choice, I'm of two minds. And the first law anywhere that's provided, it is an option. Leave it a question of legal. When we ask ourselves, what is a tip and who is intended to benefit from that tip? Presumably, a tip is money is not supposed to charge you for a service earning minimum wage delivered there, in a timely manner. Pie out is jumping through the hoops and doing all of these things with a smile on their face. So ethically, for that extra effort, isn't a little extra going to get the days of hundreds of dollars and, your tip service in which you make the food. They didn't have to serve the food. They didn't have to go get the food. Needs extra effort made by your server in bringing it to you with a smile, checking all of the boxes. Then ethically, really, we have an obligation to it. And unless something is legally mandatory to be done, which it is not, to my understanding, and not to yours.
The payment of gratuities?
That payment of gratuities.
Well,
it's at least.
I'm glad you're raising it. But again, you have to register it with the department. So you have to register and say, we will be charging gratuities. So in essence, you're kind of given a stamp of approval or a license to charge. The restaurant gets that approval, then you would obviously follow the rules and regulations, such as a public and clear display that you're charged gratuities. And so you are obligated now under the respect to gratuities. You're allowed to pay up to like 25% of salaries to make up minimum wage, for example, out of gratuities. Like there's percentage rules again that you could immerse on the persons who are running the restaurants. I'm not quite sure that all of them are aware of that. You could see very quickly where, particular piece of legislation you needed to follow.
Yeah.
That is indeed the case.
Well, we got a comment, obviously suggesting that, it's not just Mario who's, a little perturbed by this practice.
Mm-hmm.
Another writer says that we didn't expect it. So we suspect there's,
raising the issue.
No, absolutely. We're on the same page. And as we started this conversation, just to prove what we say actually does, in fact, is our intention. If it's important to you, it's important to us. And we've said this a million times. Now 1,000,001.
Mm-hmm.
And then they add on tips. But you didn't dine in.
Right.
You didn't, take advantage of this extra service. Matter of fact, you ordered it and you service that would justify this gratuity being tacked on to your bill. I think it's completely legitimate. Because certainly, again, server, not into the...
To some extent, but to the question is, yes, the restaurant has regulations.
Right.
And once they're doing that, you know that you're entering in to business or transactions with a restaurant that charges.
Apply for permission, and if applied to the relevant government department, they can be given permission to charge, but that is in the end of the public manner.
Yeah.
So whether at the front door, the kitchen,
Mm-hmm.
I'm glad to reflect on the menu, plus we charge an extra $7.
We're serving oxtails, Austin.
Oh, you mean yummy, delicious food, and next to that's turtle. Next to that is maybe a little bit of... That's right, indeed.
Let me, just like how you would...
Because in the old days, for
signs.
example, there would be a sign, next to the cashier or whatnot, and again, before digital came about, the ones that you had the alphabets that you would punch into the sign by hand, and at the very bottom, usually in fine print, but again, to your ignorance, brought up on charges of it,
and again,
I don't know will not suffice as a defense.
Yeah, ignorance to the law.
Right.
Again, I'm just seeing here that a notice is still very, and I would like to hope that what should be being done is that the moment I enter into a premise,
yes,
I know that it is a gratuity-based business and that how much?
Matters to you, we will seek out the answers and deliver it. And again, in this instance, my colleague educated not only the wider audience, but me too, because I didn't know these things. So thank you, Ellio, for doing so.
Eating out will never be the same.
Eating out will never be the same again, indeed. And I did a level of stress when you choose to go and take a meal with the family that
All
you
I
don't
can
have
say
to
is
cook.
this is probably a good time for us to tell everyone that the King's having his birthday on Monday.
You read my mind.
See, great minds think alike. I never knew my father.
I never knew my father. But you read my mind. That's exactly
okay,
where
because I read your mind, I'll let you say it then.
Oh, well, again, sort of to my pay. But on Monday, there will be a parade in front of the governor's house, as well as a celebration to honor 3 fantastic Caymanians, Loxley Banks, Francis McConvey, and, of course, the family of the King's New Year's honor of His Majesty, or you want to stick around for the celebrations and so amongst your act. There will be no straight talk on Monday on FM.